It's hard to know. Clearly, his supporters will like it, and those in the audience, a small audience yesterday, by design, it was an invitation-only event, loved it. Many standing ovations, a lot of chants of Trump, Trump, Trump. And really what you saw was a speech designed to address counterterrorism, but was really about immigration and what has been the most potent political issue for Trump in this entire campaign. It has been immigration. And there were no new ideas at all on the strategic side of fighting ISIS in Iraq, Syria, or anywhere else. There were lots of complaints about what the Obama administration had failed to do to appreciate the threat that ISIS posed, but nothing new in terms of dealing with it. But there were ideas about immigration, and as you suggested, they require a great deal more fleshing out. When Trump talks about a geographic ban on areas afflicted by terrorism, that could practically be anywhere in the world. And when you talk about an ideological purity test, people can game that. Someone says, do you believe in the U.S. Constitution? Sure. Do you think Sharia law is better than the United States law? No, I don't. Can I come in? Well, what does that tell you? It doesn't tell you anything. And then there's this idea of a federal commission. And I think for conservatives who have a deeply intellectual skepticism to federal power, the idea of a federal commission working with state and local police to conduct surveillance and teach them how to surveil and root out so-called Islamic radicals in America is a projection of federal power that I think, or I wonder, if conservatives will be comfortable with. Because if you really take Trump seriously, that there's a federal commission that will teach state and local police how to ferret out, identify, and root out people with suspicious attitudes, bad ideas, radical tendencies, you start getting into something that may, to some, sound like a thought police, or something that at least tries to move in that direction. That's a pretty heavyweight projection of federal power. That's also what Trump talked about yesterday.
Major, so Donald Trump wants to step up the fight against ISIS by calling on Russia to help, but they still got this Manafort investigation going on. So how is that going to jibe?
So let's put these component parts together. For months now, Donald Trump has been soft-pedaling differences between the Obama administration and the Russian government led by President Vladimir Putin. He's been very bashful about what Russia has or hasn't done in Ukraine. He's even suggested that Crimea isn't even a big issue, and he might not even sanction Russia for taking that part of Ukraine away from that country. And yesterday he called for a strategic alliance with Russia to fight ISIS. Now, there are all sorts of reasons why that might not happen geopolitically, but it continues this pattern of cozying up to the Russian government led by Vladimir Putin. And all of this is brought into sharp relief by now what is a call in Ukraine for an investigation into Trump's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. Why? Because his name appeared multiple times, 22, we are told, in what anti-corruption investigators in Ukraine assert is a ledger of off-the-books payments made by the former government in Ukraine that was pro-Russian, the Viktor Yanukovych government. And it appears to indicate Manafort got millions of dollars off the books for various political work done on behalf of that pro-Russian government in Ukraine. Now, it's the Ukrainian anti-corruption folks who are calling for an investigation into Manafort. Nothing in the United States. There's no implication or suggestion he's done anything to violate U.S. law, but in Ukraine this has become an issue. And what it raises all sorts of questions about is, are these policy positions from Trump that move and would move the United States much closer to Russia an original thought, coincidental, or part of this long-standing relationship that Manafort has with pro-Russian forces in Ukraine? Other people like Roger Stone, who is an unofficial campaign advisor to the Trump campaign. He also has ties to either pro-Russian officials in Ukraine or oligarchs in Russia. So what has been happening for the last couple of months is an ongoing debate. What is really the impetus behind this policy direction from Trump that is decidedly and quite obviously in favor of Russia? Is that in the U.S. best interest, and is it being driven by an actual look at the policy and just a different approach? Or is it being driven by these relationships, some of which are financial, and at least in the case of Ukraine, might be corruptly financial? All of this is now circling around the Trump campaign, and you add to that recent evidence suggesting that Russian sympathetic hackers have gotten into the Democratic National Committee database and maybe the RNC, the Republican National Committee database, and are doing things to mess with or influence the presidential election, well, you not only have a spy novel, you have something unprecedented in the history of American presidential politics.
Major Garrett in Youngstown, Ohio for us. Thank you, Major.